Welcome everybody to the Melbourne Business Network webinar series, Designing Your Website with WebOracle. Session 2 today, we're understanding web development and how it can convert visitors to buyers quickly. I'm Anita Botel, your host today, and a quick shout out to Wendy Dawson, our president, who's also joining us today. Now, before we get started, as we're still gathering in person, I'd like to officially recognise the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Now, about the Melbourne Business Network, we're a member-based networking organisation operating since 1994. We facilitate connections, communications and collaboration with businesses that contribute to the economic development of the municipality of Melbourne, and we reward best practice through the annual B3000 Awards program. A bit of housekeeping, we are recording the session, so please ask you to mute your microphones. We've left questions to the end of the session, so please pop your questions in the chat box as we go, and also your LinkedIn URL so you can connect with the rest of the people on the webinar today. Now, our topic today is web development and how it can convert visitors to buyers quickly. And I'd like you to introduce you to Michael Tricholta, the founder and managing director of WebOracle, an Australian-owned and operated business that's specifically set up to fill a gap in the marketplace by providing small businesses in Australia IT and online solutions. Michael's going to take us through the impact web development has on improving your business performance and how you can use great web development to convert your web visitors to buyers. Michael, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. In session 1, we talked about how to create a great online user experience with web design. Can you summarise the key takeouts from that session before presenting today's content, please? Thanks, Michael.
We're going to recap on what web design is in this webinar, just to sort of give you a few takeout key points. And then we're going to go into what development is, what web development is, and why it is so critical to your website and your business online exposure. We're going to take you also through a client case study, which is Wine Cartel. They started off as a B2B and then moved into the B2C area. Now, at this point, I want to point out that all functionality, whether you're a B2B or whether you're a B2C, all good functionality relates directly back, or good website design and development relates back to both of these topics joining together and giving you and your business the right outcome it deserves. And then we're going to go through the key takeouts of what functionality set lists are and why they're so important and critical to your web design and development process. And then we'll take some questions and answers. So just to recap on our web design webinar last week, where we had just a couple of key takeouts that you should keep front and center in your mind in terms of when designing your website. Have an online strategy before you grow your business. Understanding what you're trying to achieve is critical to the entire process. Knowing what you want to do, what those outcomes are going to yield, and how you're going to implement them. You're obviously going to need a great team. There's a lot of people out there, or a lot of companies out there that sort of use one-man bands, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Working with a professional team of experts provides you with that ability to be able to join all the dots and really get an end-to-end solution from start to finish, including your marketing component, right? Because there's some of the questions that do get asked throughout the entire process, because we as web developers and designers and marketers, we need to know exactly what your end goal is going to be. So getting the right team on board is critical to every single development that you undertake with your website, especially if you want to expose it online.
Michael,
yes.
Sorry, I'm just going to say, I'm really looking forward to seeing the presentation. I'm just wondering if we could get that up on screen.
Oh, right. Have you not seen that? Sorry, my apologies. I thought I just shared that. So let me just...
Well, I can't see it. So I'm assuming everybody else can't. No problem. There we go. All happening.
All right. How's that?
Yay.
My apologies. Let's start again. So we'll recap. I've gone through the development component, case studies, which will be Wine Cartel, which I've just spoken to you about, and then we'll go through the key takeouts, question and answers, Recap of great design. So basically, as I said earlier, have an online strategy, understand what it is you're trying to achieve in the web development process. Work with that professional team to make sure you've got everything stitched up from start to finish with an outcome in mind. So everything needs to be sort of segmented, blocked off and understood so everything comes together at the end. Every website you build at the end of the day must yield some type of result. There's no point having a website unless you're looking at getting some exposure online and channeling the right type of clientele. So having a good team that know what they're doing is critical to your process. User experience, that's another critical one. There's no point building a site unless people know how to use it properly, understand what you do, and be able to make a decision there very, very quickly. So that's a very important key component to a great website. But also you need to, at the end of the day, once you've built your site, you've really got to get out there and push it. It's no different to having a high street shop. You've really got to get out there, have a marketing strategy in place. And that normally starts at the start of the entire process. So your web development team and your marketing team that are undertaking this process will certainly put together a very on-point process that covers all of these touch points that's going to yield an outcome for you. Because ultimately what you're looking for result. You're connecting with your audience. They need to know what you do. They need to know how to find you quickly, and marketing is a really good option. Some businesses, whether you're a B2B or a B2C, have various channels, whether it's through Google AdWords and good SEO. You can easily fence off your geographical locations through a good marketing process. So keep that in mind. Always when starting off a new web development, make sure that you've got that strategy nailed down, because it will yield what you needed to do if you've got the right processes in place, but more importantly, is the right development components as well. And I'll talk about that now. Why is web development so important and as web design? Well, web design, people look at that and think, well, that's great, looks good, or everything works well. There's another component in the back end which really drives it. It's the engine room that really connects with Google. It does what it needs to do. So you need to, if you're a business that is looking to grow, you need some functionality set lists. So what we tend to do as a development company, functional always follows form. You probably hear architects say that quite a bit, and smart businesses take advantage of that online very quickly. So having a great user experience, but also having some functionality that's going to work very quickly, that your visitors can relate to, and more importantly, can click on those call to action. So every call to action is literally a functionality within a website that allows people to make decisions very quickly and process what it is that they're looking to achieve. So what is functionality? Functionality are things like e-commerce. You'll see a newsletter on a website, APIs, which are third-party plugins, like e-commerce plugins from your bank, for example. They might allow you to, or they'll give you a snippet of code that you can plug directly into the website, which will allow you to make a transaction securely without any issue. So identifying your functionality set list at this point of the development is critical. That is going to set everything up moving forward. So this is not design. This is all about how your clients are going to interact with your website once they've found you. Then once you've identified your functionality set list, you'll look at a content management system, and CMS for short. Now, not all content management systems are the same. There's a lot of off-the-shelf stuff that you can easily get, like I did mention in our previous webinar, like Squarespace. There's a few other ones out there. Ample. You could search the internet. There's tons of them out there. We use them. Shopify, there's no issue with them. but the more robust ones are the ones such as Joomla, you've got WordPress, and then you can get into some more, I guess, complex ones depending on what you're looking to do. So if you're looking to build a website that's going to be a little bit more bespoke, you'd probably look at building it from the ground up. But 99% of websites don't need to be. There's a lot of great off-the-shelf content management systems that allow you to use them very easily and efficiently without having to go down the route of building something from the ground up. So content management system, after you've identified your functionality set list, is critical to the next part of what you're trying to do. So once you've done that, your wireframes come into play. So wireframes are the first part of a design that basically structures all the functionality within the pages, the page, at the home page, and then all the subsequent internal pages thereafter. So whenever you're building a website, you always start with mobile first. Now, if you go to our website, we have a great ebook that basically gives you some stats on how many people are using mobile versus desktop. So mobile's quite up there. It's nearly, I think it's sitting at around 75% at the moment, growing. A lot of people are using mobile first before they make any sort of either purchase or any search query in Google. So we always, as web designers and developers, will start with a mobile first approach to make sure that everything in terms of your functionality sits well on mobile. That's probably the harder part to get right as opposed to a desktop. So starting there is a good starting point. User experience, you've got to follow the user experience process. Make sure that every element of your functionality set list is identified in a hierarchy, and there's some information architecture that follows. So understanding what are the important pieces of information that you want people to see when they land on your pages. So understanding all that and putting those into the wireframes is critical at this point. So we're not looking at design at this point. This is all about structure and functionality. Then working out where those call to actions are going to be. They are critical to a great user experience. Knowing where to put them, knowing how large to make them, how bright to make them is critical to the process. How many times have you gone to a website and flipped through a site and not known exactly where you are? And there's so much content that you're looking at it and you're thinking, wow, this is just a little overwhelming, especially for a mobile user. The experience is not that great. So finding little things like accordion sort of pullouts on a mobile phone is imperative to a good user experience, rather than having streams of information they can click to drop downs to view additional information. So all of these functionalities are critical to having people stay on the site for as long as possible. The average person will click out in 3 seconds if they don't see what they want. If your site loads longer than 5, they'll go. So understanding all of this is critical, and making sure that there's a functionality that you can actually, whereby it compresses the entire site to speed it up. So you need to look at all of these elements and make sure that you've ticked all the boxes before you move forward with any type of design formats. Then once everything's been locked down in terms of your wireframe, your content and positioning and your hierarchy, that is the time that you start your web development. The designer at this point would have basically put the design together, and then everything starts getting written into the content management component, and then you load it directly onto your server, and then you basically do all the testing, and the site should be ready to go. Before you go live, you need to get Google compliance in. Now, Google compliance is another type of or a form of functionality. Now, as I was saying earlier, if you are going down the route and you're going to build a website that's going to drive traffic and obviously business for you, Google compliance is a very important part of a good web design and development process. It's the part that connects you to your audience. If it's done correctly, you will be able to track all of your leads, where they're coming from, how long it takes to convert each one of them, and literally follow them around the internet. How many times have you been followed around on the internet with a particular advert? That's good web practice. It's a functionality that Google basically provides you through their tag manager, and you can set up attributes through your analytics process, through your business, Google My Business account. So this is a critical part that really helps you sort of drive your traffic, but you've got to get all of this part right first. So all of this is critical to making sure that you get your Google compliance here and are able to be able to market correctly and efficiently. So what I'm going to do is take you through an example of a website process of how we would go about identifying a set list of functionality and then putting that into a web development process with a client called Wine Cartel. Now, historically, as I mentioned earlier, all of their clients are larger type clients, Dan Murphy's, Liquorland, etc. So they're a B2B essentially. And so what they wanted to do was capitalize on being able to take on some of that B2C market. So what did we do? We literally took a brief. We got them to fill out a comprehensive questionnaire with close to 100 questions. So we want to know exactly what it is you're trying to achieve. We want to understand what that functionality set list looks like, because that's the critical part for us, is understanding what you're trying to do. And then we'll go into the process of understanding what your goals are, your long-term goals are in terms of marketing the site online. So basically, we worked out what they wanted to do, and understood exactly where they wanted to go. We analysed all this information. We looked at all of their competitors to create a point of difference. Now, point of difference, you can't be all things to everyone on the web. So you really need to do a little bit of market research, and that kind of comes with the territory as a small business, is to understand exactly what you're getting into, and where your market's going to sit. And we can help you with those sorts of things by literally jumping online and analysing some of your competitors and seeing where their traffic comes from and how that's going to relate back to you and what your point of difference is going to be on your website. So that's critical to the process. Then what we did is we came up with a solution on how we could create the best process for them. So the premise of their website was to build a database and create, because they sold wine, they needed to be able to drive a database. So selling wine by the box is not something you look for online. So the strongest way to really communicate that efficiently on a regular basis is to build a database. Now, if you've got a 50,000 strong database all over Australia, the likelihood of converting these people regularly through a good marketing campaign and a good campaign strategy over 12 months, where you present your products in different type of way and keep people engaged, is critical to your process. Advertising through Google AdWords is another one, by word of mouth. People might be able to find you. However, in this instance, it was definitely through a database. So basically, I'll take you through the functionality set list. It was an e-commerce. We knew it was e-commerce. They'd fill out the questionnaire. They needed to have unlimited products to their site. They needed to have a newsletter, an email newsletter template that they could send out on a regular basis, whether it be weekly or monthly, and keep connected to their database. An online contact submission form for anyone that wanted to connect with them was another functionality. So a content management system, in this case, we used WordPress. And then we obviously did a Google Analytics and compliance check to match. They needed unlimited products and categories because they never knew exactly what was coming through at any one time, depending on the wine supplier and how they were going to supply the wine to them. Homepage featured product slider was an important part because that related directly back to their campaign. So if they were running a monthly campaign, they needed to be able to affiliate that back to the actual product itself through that and communicate it through their product slider. So if anyone landed on it, it had that continuity of that monthly campaign. Email subscriber database management system. I can't stress how critical and how important a database is to any business. It's so much easier talking to existing clients than what it is to go out and get a new client. Now, if you've got a database built in to your system, it's such an easy way to communicate what you're trying to do on a regular basis and keep your clients engaged. And whether they buy or not, that's entirely up to them. But knowing that that's there and that you can communicate keeps your brand strength up as well. So it serves quite a few purposes. Secure pages required. Because it was an alcohol company, we needed to make sure that we had secure pages. We needed to follow Australian standards in terms of liquor licensing laws that surrounded anything to do with liquor sales online. Each client needed their own private login and an account view of what they purchased previously. And also an SEO friendly setup, because they wanted to be found online on a regular basis right across the country. So we did all that. We set up all the page descriptions, title tags, meta tags, which is a completely different topic. But having all of this functionality in their site was critical to the success of where they were moving. And then finally, we provide them with some content management system training. So having all of this is one thing, but you need to understand how to use it all as well. Not very difficult. Not very difficult if you're working with the right company and you understand exactly what you're trying to do. They need to be able to communicate that through the process. So once we've done that, we come up with a thing called a landing page. We now know exactly what this website's going to look like. We know that there's a landing page. We know that they need a login page. We also know that they need to create an account because of licensing laws. This all sits on the home page. And then, sorry, if I can just go back, then you've got the product page, which basically leads to the cart, which is the e-commerce component, what we do, who we are, upcoming deals, another e-commerce component, T's and C's and privacy policies. So I'm going to take you through what a wireframe looks like and how we implement the functionality components to these wireframes before we start with any design. So here are the wireframes and the user experience process. So this is not about design at the moment. This is about user experience and functionality set lists. Notice how your eyes lead directly to all things blue. Now, they're all the call to actions on this site. We wanted to make sure that there's a deal. Basically, their brand was all about sort of illicit wines and something that's just a little bit under the table that you're not going to find anywhere else. So knowing exactly how their homepage would look like, because people basically needed to add in all their details prior to seeing any of the wine, due to obviously liquor licensing laws. So you needed to enter a date and all, make sure that you're within the age bracket of purchasing wine and you agree to all the terms and conditions. Then you go into a login page. So we create a login, an account sign up area, but also sign up a friend where they can actually forward this off to a particular friend at some stage to keep building that database, because it's all about the database for these guys. That's the way they communicate to their audience. So then what we did is worked out what that home page was going to look like, and we blocked it off into a block type of grid with lots of space, big call to actions everywhere, hook up a friend, another call to action. So what they did in this instance was for every person that was signed up and redeemed a coupon, they would receive a $50 voucher directly from them and credit it to their account. So it was in their database's best interest to keep sort of flicking these types of deals out to friends to keep building that awareness and that brand strength as well. And then what we did is come up with a product page that describes the product, quantity, and then add it to the cart and basically check out. So that's really the essence of the site, which covers everything. So then we went to the mobile first component. Knowing what the design was going to look like, we basically created their brand, and their look, their feel, the tone and the voice of the messaging was really critical. But notice how we've used everything in terms of the wireframes, and we've just translated it directly to mobile first, because a lot of people, wine's one of those things you're not going to be sitting at work looking at your computer searching for wine. So it's one of those things you do on the fly, whether you're on a train, tram, you're at home, an email pops up and you can order your wine straight away. But this is really the essence of how the site would look on a mobile version. So we basically took the design, start a deal here, make sure that you filled in all of your details along on that second tile, and then basically the third tile allowed you to join and look at all the various deals that they had, and then away you went. And then what we did is obviously looked at the desktop version of how that would look. So this is what it looks like on desktop whilst it's in design mode. They provide us all of the content, etc. We help them the wireframes, in fact, help all clients in terms of understanding exactly what they need page by page. So we hand over all the wireframes to the clients and all the pages. They're all identified and they know exactly what is going where. And as the site's being built, we just keep loading all of their content to the various links that you see along here, and all the various pages. And this is what their actual deals look like, or their hot deals, for example. So you can basically click on that and see what's on offer. It tells you a little bit about the actual product itself, and then you can purchase from there. And then again, further down the page is some more information that provides new releases, last chance types of deals, additional deals, etc. And hook up a friend or sign up to our newsletter along the way if you're not quite there yet. So, and this is what their cart looks like. This is what we designed, and this is basically the whole process until you check out. So basically proceed to check out and away you go. And that's where it basically took us. So wine can tell new development, which goes business buys quickly. So takeouts out of this. So I'm just going to get to the takeout component of this. So choose the right content management system. Make sure you've got the right functionality. Understand exactly what you're trying to achieve. As I said earlier, you can't be all things to everybody. As I'm sure you all understand very well, it's understanding what you're trying to achieve online is critical, but also partnering up with the right company will certainly help you bring that out and sharpen that whole process to make sure that you do get an outcome. Identifying your set list, obviously your functionality set list, which I've mentioned. Test your website thoroughly before you go live. There's always glitches. No website ever is perfect after it's completed. There's always a little bit of tweaking that needs to be done, and before you go live, you make sure that that's all complete. But a good web development company certainly will provide you that process. Choose the right servers and the company with good security and support. Ongoing support and ongoing security is critical to every website. The banks go down. The CIA have gone down. They use an open source. Every website at some point will have an issue with its functionality somewhere along the line. Where good websites stand out, where they have great support and good people around them to guide them, to make sure that the right server's being put in place. Cheap is not always good. It can cover certain areas, but it's not going to give you what you want all the time. So if you have 100,000 people visiting your website and you've gone for a solution that is a very inexpensive solution, the likelihood that site going down is quite high, because you're sitting on a server with probably 200 or 300 or 400 other websites. So understanding what you are trying to do, and making sure that your website is load tested and that it can handle the type of traffic that you're looking to attract is critical. But also having that support there, if anything goes wrong, is super important. Implementation of all of your Google tracking is critical. You want to know where your clients are coming from. You want to understand what their thought process is. And more importantly, you want to understand what it takes to convert. And tracking and testing all of this and understanding where they're coming from is really critical, especially if you're running a Google AdWords campaign and trying to attract clients from, whether it be geo fenced off areas such as Melbourne or somewhere across Australia, or even globally. You need to understand what that length of time is and how long it takes you to convert that client, because you'll be able to put a dollar figure on it in terms of a cost per conversion and a cost per lead for each of those potential clients. So that's a very critical component. Then test, and then before you go live, test it thoroughly one more time and then go live, knowing that you've got all of that support. So that's pretty much it. I'm ready to, I'm not sure how much time we've sort of taken up, but I'm ready to take some questions if anyone would like to put anything forward.
Thanks, Michael. As usual, I've got questions. I'll get you to put your lovely presence up on screen so we can talk to you directly as we take questions. I've always got lots of questions, so while everybody else is thinking of their questions, there's a lot of information there. And I think sometimes, you know, when you're thinking about your website, it can be a little daunting. So my first question around this is, are you recommending that people sort of reinvigorate their whole website? Or if you've got a website, you've got a base, is it really just delving into that from a development perspective to understand what the, you know, what you've got in place and what CMS packages you're using, etc.?
Yeah, look, you can definitely do that. There's a lot of things to take into consideration when you are refreshing your site or you're rebuilding your site. Now, if your site is something well over 5 or 6 years old and it's not been well kept and supported, the likelihood of you needing a complete rebuild is very high. And the reason being is there are a lot of plugins that are usually associated with functionalities that you can literally just pull off the shelf and plug straight into your website. Now, if they haven't been kept well and updated, you'll probably find that the site will at some stage go down, or you'll have problems with it. And the moment you try and update it, it'll start to break. So there's a fine balance between refreshing your site, rebuilding your site, as opposed to just giving it a few tweaks. In most cases, you could probably tweak it if it's quite not too old, but in most cases, you're better off starting the process from the start to finish, especially if you do have a lot of issues with the site in terms of user experience, because everything starts with the functionality and user experience, that front end interaction, and then making sure that it all works from the back end. And sometimes readjusting a lot of these components along the way can be a lot more costly than sort of just picking up and starting again.
Yeah, I'd go so far as to say, Michael, that a lot of people with websites probably don't know if they've got a good user experience a lot, because, I mean, I'll talk for myself, you know, I don't use it from a user experience so much. I use it as a, you know, I'm trying to get something done or trying to deliver something. So when you talk about the plugins and those sorts of things, are you saying that it's good to keep them updated so you know, the longevity of your website is extended?
Absolutely, it's critical, and this is where a good team comes into play. I mean, as a business, most businesses focus on what they do best, and then if there's that digital element that connects their clients to them, well, that's they're obviously their website, but that needs to be upkept on a regular basis. And those plugins, the better you keep the plugins. It's like anything. If you service your vehicle on a regular basis, you're going to get a lot more longevity out of it for a longer period of time, as opposed to not looking after it. So if you're not servicing, or if you're not updating your plugins and making sure that the back end is always kept clean, there's this thing. A lot of log files are collected along the way, and what they are, it's just little cases of bits of information that get attached to your site as the site gets older and people are tracking your site, or other companies are tracking your site. What you want to do is you want to clear these on a regular basis. This will speed up the website. Its performance will improve dramatically. So these little upkeeps here and there are really critical to the success of your website. But more importantly as well, Google do request, there's a checklist, as I mentioned in the previous webinar, whereby they do request that you follow their rules, and having everything ticked off in terms of what their requirements are is critical when it comes to a Google AdWords campaign. It'll drive the cost of each campaign lower if you've met all of their requirements. So having a good team behind you is critical if you don't know exactly what to do in the back end of that site.
Mm. We've got a question from one of our members asking if a WordPress theme is enough to determine the design of your homepage, or whether you think bringing in a designer is actually essential to the process and look and feel, etc.
So themes are great, they're fantastic, but it all starts with the functionality set list and how your clients are going to use that website. Not every shoe is going to fit every foot. So a good web development team will take into consideration a theme. They will look at that theme, but they will look at the user experience more importantly over the theme, and then they can make the necessary adjustments to suit that user experience. So if there's a process that you want to follow, a little bit like the wine cartel example that I provided, their whole process was just provide the product as soon as you land on the page and build the database. That's how simple the brief was, and that works well for them. That's been critical in terms of getting the right process first over the theme. So whilst themes are great, they still need tweaking because they're not going to fit all of your requirements, and they can be a little bit distracting because some of them, they have this thing called parallax coding, where you have an image sitting behind an image and one slides up ahead of the other. It's a very 2015 type of thing, but in order to circumnavigate that, you probably don't want that on a mobile platform, for the reason is it takes up a lot of data. So getting your user experience right, understanding your market, and building your website specifically for them is the most important part, and then you can tweak your particular theme to suit that very easily.
Mm. Michael, another question again about WordPress. There's some, I'll just read this out. I've heard that WordPress is not very secure and can be hacked quite easily. Is this your experience, or is that perhaps just a personal experience?
Any website can be hacked. As I mentioned earlier, the CIA were hacked. You've heard of WikiLeaks. This is where a lot of this information comes from. So everything can be hacked. If someone wants to hack something, they will. But no one. The easy way around a lot of this sort of stuff is to put the right processes in place. Having a good SSL certificate, firstly. Having a thing called Cloudflare is another thing that basically removes or stops bots entering your site. So Cloudflare is a product that you can literally implement into your site, and that'll stop any attacks. The other thing you can do is block various IP addresses and countries. So if there are particular hotspots around the world that may be of concern to a particular client, you can completely block that IP so they can't enter into our country to start with, or into Australia an Australian IP address, but more importantly, they can't enter into your website. So you can block certain types of traffic by using correct sort of 101 security standards. The other thing also is having your own individual IP address that is encrypted, which also provides a higher level of security. There's a list of things you can do to stop being hacked, but inevitably, if someone would like to hack your site, the possibility is highly likely that it would be.
So are you suggesting that maybe we'd be able to block our competitors from looking at our site by blocking their IP addresses?
If you knew their IP address, you could block them, yes.
Wow. Fantastic, I love it.
Yeah.
Michael, I want to go back to this testing of the website, because, you know, we keep coming back to that user experience, and there's a lot of, I think, questions around that. When you talk about testing the website, who do you recommend does that and why? Can we talk through that?
So who tests the website? Your web developer would always test the website at the end. If you're building a website, you need to make sure that, because you've got all these moving parts, it's a very mechanical process, building a website and putting things into certain places requires a little bit of experience, and then making sure they all relate to one another and that they're all talking to one another throughout the process is critical. So a good developer will be able to regularly test the site before it goes live and keep testing it regularly thereafter. Generally what happens with a website, they work very well, there's no issues. It's, if anything does happen or something goes pop, it's usually the user that creates the issue, or you've been hacked. It's only one or two of two things. Nothing else can go wrong unless you have an outage. So that's the third component that could really impede on your whole website. But testing is critical to the process before you go live, and then implementation onto the server is another very important component or a service that you need to look at when you are launching your site.
Would you also recommend that like a sample of your customer base or somebody like that also test the website from that user experience perspective? Yeah,
so what we tend to do, we as a company would split test everything. So we would open up browsers like Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Internet Explorer, you name them, version, whatever it might be. Someone might have an iPhone 4. So we might go back to iPhone 4 version all the way up until today and make sure that the website is compatible on all of those versions, because you need to make sure that you're covering all bases when you are testing your site before you go to live mode. And part of that best practice of testing is making sure that it's compatible with an iOS, that's compatible with an Android, and what version of Android are you going back to if you're going to go back that far. So all of this needs to be taken into account when building a site. I know that there's a lot of off-the-shelf products that will probably go about 3 or 4 versions back, but not all the way. So it's all about understanding who your target audience is. If they're probably if the demographic's slightly older, you probably go back a few versions. Where if it's a little more progressive or younger, perhaps, you probably stick within a certain hitting range and reduce that particular testing type.
Thanks, Michael. I know it's just amazing how things change, isn't it, from a technology perspective, where now, you don't just develop the website so that someone logs on from a laptop. It's that user experience on the mobile, iPads, all those sorts of things now, and the variances that are involved in that.
It's incredible, and that's technology is evolving and it's growing rapidly. The amount of traffic to the web is increasing now. I'm sure some of you might remember dial-up. It took half an hour for one image to appear on a screen. We're now rendering 1040 HD on video, and that you can do that on a mobile phone. So technology is improving as we move into G5 technology and having that speed. Everything's about speed and movement and accessibility at the moment, and that's the way it's going, because there is more traffic coming to the web and people are searching online a lot more for their services. And given that we've just gone through a COVID epidemic, you know, globally, people are literally online for everything that they're looking for, whether it be a service. B2Bs are doing it. I mean, we're doing it online consistently with all our clients, and technology plays a big part, and it's going to play a big part moving forward. We have a great ebook on our site that gives you the full breakdown of where technology is going over the next 5 years and what those growth figures look like in various sectors.
Well, that's fabulous. So we'll make sure we get hold of that ebook and put that up on our
Sure.
website as well. I've got another question here. We've updated our website about 6 months ago and not having support from our website developers, SEO content developers. So, segue, how hard is it to change providers, and does this affect visitors to the website in the short term?
Super easy to change providers. We do it all the time. It's about understanding what you're trying to achieve. Firstly, having a good look at the website, what it's doing, what your goals are moving forward, setting some KPIs, and then moving the site across to a provider that can provide you support. Support is critical. I've never seen a website work well without good support. Support is the first and most important component to a successful outcome for your website and your business if you're looking to attract people online. So it's very, very simple. It basically is as simple as zipping up your file, which your existing web developer can do, and then transferring it over. And what we normally do is we basically, all we need is literally an auth key, which your existing provider can do, and then we just literally unpack it and load it directly onto a server. So it's minimal downtime. In fact, there's almost no downtime. And if there would be downtime, it would probably be 30 to 40 minutes, and we normally tend to do it at a convenient time that is not going to impact the business whatsoever. And then moving forward is obviously working out a strategy for just talking to your point about SEO, is working out what that strategy is going to look like. Everything is about strategy, making sure that that strategy also is converting to what your websites or how your website speaks to your clients. So looking at your website, auditing the website to make sure that all the elements are in place. Once you've got all of the elements in place, like your Google Tag Manager, making sure that the user experience is on point, that all the title tags, etc., are put in the right positions, and the meta tags are all within the website, and the page structures are all correct, then you can go into the next phase of marketing. And that's pretty straightforward, but you've got to have the foundation right.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, I just wanted to ask a question for all the small business operators out there, particularly those that are independent, you know, professional services, sole operators. There's a lot of movement now to Facebook and, you know, social platforms like that, as opposed to website. And the only listing that you can really find on a Google search will be just, you know, like something that comes up as a listing under SEO, but no actual website address. Talk to us about the importance of having that website that supports your business, as opposed to just going to something like social platforms, or is in fact that the future?
Well, I guess you can do both with a website. So, you know, your website's your calling card online. We know that 99% of all searches are conducted online through a search engine. And that part is critical. So how you communicate that is obviously understanding your audience and creating a website that's going to appeal to them, but also having that messaging right. Now, you can drill down by creating campaigns through social platforms and even online through Google AdWords, etc., by segmenting your audience type, understanding who they are, breaking the demographic down, and then creating landing pages, whether it be online through Google or through Google AdWords, or through platforms, social platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, depending on if it's a professional service or not, and then launching a campaign that's going to relate to your particular service or product.
Absolutely. So at this point in time, I think the message is that they go hand in hand and they really should be complementing each other as opposed to working independently.
They do. And people, I think it's 87% of all clients or your potential clients, if you don't have a website, they won't engage you.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I remember. Sorry, keep going.
Web's very important element to any business. I think if you jumped online, and I guess if you looked for a legal practice and they didn't have a website, how would you feel about that? It's just a question. There is a, I guess even tradies today, they go down the path of having a website or some type of web presence. I think it's an important part. In fact, it is an important part of building your business. It's a building block and definitely a cornerstone of authority, but it also creates a sense of security for your potential client, knowing the services that you provide, what you do. They can get a quick snapshot of who you are, as opposed to just having a Facebook presence or a LinkedIn presence.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, another question from Donna. Do you implement different strategies for personal service firms as opposed to e-commerce / product sales companies?
Absolutely. We implement strategies to suit clients. Every strategy is bespoke. We need to understand your demographic. We need to understand what you're trying to achieve, what your product or your service is, and then find who your competitors are, work out what they're doing, and then create a campaign that's broken down into sections and have KPIs to make sure that we're reaching goals and milestones along the way to ensure that you're getting the traffic and the business that you're looking to achieve out of that campaign.
Okay, absolutely.
It's a proven methodology.
There's certainly a lot to consider, isn't there? And I think if we take it step by step, it's probably going to be a little bit more achievable and easier to digest as it is in terms of, just starting from scratch and wondering where to begin. You mentioned SSL certification.
Security certificate, license.
Yeah.
So SSLs are very important. So if you ever notice on a web URL where the domain name sits, where you type in someone's URL, there's a little bar or like a padlock. It's a requirement by Google these days to actually have an SSL certificate. Sites that don't have them generally have a red bar, I think diagonally across the SSL bar itself, and the HTTP doesn't have the S, which means it's not a secure website. And if you were to be Googled, or someone was to Google your website, it might come up with a box to say, are you sure you want to enter this website? It does not have a secure page. At which point people start to and ah, like, oh, I'm not quite sure, could hack or could corrupt my computer, could do all sorts of stuff. So having those in place is critical to Google as part of their checklist to make sure that you're doing the right thing. But also there's an accountability component to it as well, because back in I think it was 2004, 2005, when the internet was really starting to take off, there was a lot of phishing that was going on, and there wasn't really any accountability. So Google have made it, not compulsory, but they highly recommend that you certainly put an SSL certificate for the security of the visitor. So as a visitor to a website, the first two things I look for is credibility. And if you don't have an SSL certificate on your website, it raises a few concerns in terms of, are you a legitimate business? And if I can't find a contact detail on the site either, or some type of address of where you are in the country, that's a concern. The SSL certificate will provide all that information, even if you choose not to provide a physical address, which you're entitled to. But the SSL certificate tells me a lot. So if anything was ever to go wrong, there's recourse there.
So, okay, we better know how to do that and what's involved.
So an SSL certificate, most businesses don't need a massive SSL certificate. They last from 1 year to 2 years. They're licensed. They're provided by security companies, and they basically give you an encrypted code that basically sits behind your URL that says this site's secure. It also stops hackers as well trying to get into the site, and people sort of dropping in little phishing pages onto the site. So they're very simple to purchase. Your web developer will do that and load that up within 10 or 15 minutes. It can become complex if you are selling online. And if you are selling a lot of product online, there's a whole Dun and Bradstreet process. So that can take up to 2 to 4 weeks in some cases, because there are security checks that need to be ticked off before you actually get that SSL certificate. But in 99.9% cases, it's as simple as speaking to your web developer and loading that up, which will only take a few minutes. And they're really inexpensive. They range from anywhere from $20, and they can go north of $4,000 or $5,000 for some of the more, I guess, more robust websites. But as I said, over 99.9% only need something that's very simple and secure.
Phew. Again, lots to consider.
Yeah.
We've got a few minutes left, Michael, and nobody else is putting questions in the question box, but I will connect you with everybody that's on the call today. But the final question for me, I think, is around plugins. The websites that are built always seem to need plugins. Are there websites that have got a lot of these content management systems and databases and things like that already built in, or are they always plugins, or is it a combination?
So they start off with a very basic frame. And then you basically purchase all of the plugins and plug them all in. So it's basic framework. So you build as you go. It's a little bit like Lego. You only use what you need, and then you can keep expanding on that, which can, depending on the complexity of the site, you obviously just pick and choose what you need and then configure it accordingly.
Okay. Well, we're just about at the that time of the day. So, Michael, I'm going to say thank you very much for your time today and the fabulous content that you've given us. We'll have to get on to the wine cartel. I'm sure they did some fantastic business through COVID. I know some of the wine companies that I frequent certainly did.
Very good.
That whole concept of buying wine by the box, I really don't think that was an issue through COVID. But anyway.
No, very good. Right.
Everybody, thank you for joining us today. We've had some fabulous content from Michael. I will be in contact with you all. I'll email you all, and Michael's kindly sharing the presentation that he's presented to you today also. And we've recorded the session, so of course this will appear on our website at some point. If you're not part of the Melbourne Business Network already as a member, please join us. It's not just about getting the content and connecting with everybody. There's an opportunity to share your stories and share the great successes that you're doing with your businesses. Next week, we have the final part in this series, which is 17th of November, same time, same back channel. We're going to cover e-commerce and how that can convert visitors to buyers quickly. So everybody that has a website really needs to understand the importance of the integration of e-commerce and the effect that that has on their business. So thank you, Michael, once again. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on behalf of WebOracle and the Melbourne Business Network. Stay safe, and we'll see you hopefully in the flesh very soon. Thank you.